Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new live episode of Truth Be Told Minuteman Report. This is Robert Hensley, your Truth Be Told Minuteman, and I am coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere in North America. I like to call it the bunker. So on today's episode, we're taking a look at, I had a thought the other day, made Tony laugh, because I couldn't exactly figure out why I was thinking about it, but it came to the realization that Joan Crawford had 4 children, and the only child really that I knew anything about was Christina, and that was because of course, the book and the movie Mommy Dearest. And so I thought, isn't that wild how, Joan Crawford is still an icon, and yet I just couldn't find I just hadn't heard anything about what became of her family, and in particular, what happened to her son, Christopher, right? So, so me and my rabbit holes. So I went digging, and so what I found out is that Joan had adopted Christina, and then she had adopted a child with her husband, Mr. Terry, and they had named him Christopher, but the birth mother reclaimed the child. So they only had Christopher with them for a very short time, and then they adopted another son whom they named Philip Terry. And after Joan divorced Mr. Terry, she changes Philip's name to Christopher. So he became the new Christopher Crawford. Okay? And then she adopted the twins, Kathy and Cindy. So Christopher, let's focus there because he's the one that I want. He's the one that he was on my mind. I don't know why, it just popped up. But so Christopher showed a lot of signs of ADD, ADHD. He had trouble focusing, couldn't really pay attention. And Joan took her son to the doctor, and her family physician said that she just needed to be more firm in her discipline, to the point that they were literally basically shackling the kid to the bed at night. And when he was 12, he did run away. They brought him back. It was a news story. There were photos. And then by the time he was, 15, he's living in Long Island at the home of a prominent child psychiatrist. And while there, he and a group of friends snuck out, stole a car, and basically wreaked havoc for a couple of days with an air rifle, which culminated in a young girl, 14-year-old girl, getting shot in the mouth, breaking her teeth. So Joan pleaded with the judge for leniency and asked that Christopher be sent to a home for troubled youth rather than being in the prison system. And so when Christopher is 18, he goes no contact, right? No more Mama Joan. And for years, Joan was, even it had gone so far that the publicists and things were telling people, like, when you meet Joan, do not ask about her son. Do not ask about her son. And so that's where this hole, right? The hole in the story comes from, is because Joan would refuse to talk about him. So Christopher on the East Coast ends up marrying a woman, having 2 kids, leaves her, gets married again, has another kid. Joan, however, even though she's not talking to Christopher and she refuses to speak about him, she does have the numbers of the wives and the information about the children in her date book when she dies. So she was keeping tabs, right? She did know about her son's families. And when it comes to Joan's death, right? Christina, of course, is disinherited. Christopher disinherited, and the entire estate goes to Kathy and Cindy, to the twins. However, there was a revocable trust that either Joan didn't remember or didn't have time to change before she passed, And what that did was that ended up leaving Christina beneficiary of 2 apartments in New York, a car, a wad of cash, and then access to all of the investments. Many of which, because Joan was very frugal, she herself during her lifetime didn't really know her own worth. She would let like war bonds mature, and things were just sitting in accounts and drawing interest. So what ended up happening is Christina ends up with this kind of like massive windfall that Joan didn't expect or plan on her having. She had access to, well over $2 million, which she splits with Christopher. Now, Christopher ends up, having some issues and things as an adult, again, leaving his families and some drug issues and some things like that. But he did become an actor. I found that he has a couple of credits. He did an episode of Skyways in 1979, and he did an episode of Holiday Island in 1981. But then there's not really a whole lot left to say about Christopher. He did end up kind of reconciling with his own children in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then he passes away in 2006 from cancer. So that is what became of Christopher Crawford. Now, we all know that Christina, of course, her book kind of really became kind of all the rage. And then Faye Dunaway did the movie version of the book, and that kind of catapulted her into a level of stardom that she was uncomfortable with. And maybe even kind of locked her into or pigeonholed her into a style of acting that she didn't want to be in. But yeah, like I said, I don't know too much about Cindy or Kathy as well. But Christopher was the one. The other day I just had this thought, just kind of like, I remember there was a boy. Like, what happened to the boy? I did not realize that he was kind of Christopher 2. He was the sequel. And if you want to know, I did check to see what happened to the first Christopher. And the last thing that I can find is that after his birth mother reclaimed him, she ends up selling him for drug money. And then there's kind of nothing after that. So hopefully he was taken away by the state and, adopted by a fantastic family and had a great life. At least that's what I'm hoping. So that is today's Minuteman Report. I hope you had your questions about Joan Crawford's family answered. I sure did. And remember, there are 4 opportunities every week for new content from Truth Be Told. Minuteman Report Mondays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 Eastern. Tuesdays, same time, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 Eastern for La Verdad Se Habla, which is Truth Be Told Spanish with metaphor. And Bonnie Burkert on Wednesdays, same time, with Truth Be Told Transformation. And then, of course, Tony Sweet on Fridays with the original Truth Be Told. Again, we love that 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 Eastern. And for more information, you can always go to our website, www.truthbetoldparanormal.com. And I think Tony's on TikTok. We've got content all over the place. Join us on Instagram. And we will see you next week. Just remember, as always, please stay true.